Python provides a logging system as a part of its standard library, so you can quickly add logging to your application. In this clip, you will learn how to get started quickly, and you will get an introduction to some of the advanced features available in the logging module. The logging module in Python is a ready-to-use and powerful module that is designed to satisfy the needs of beginners as well as enterprise teams. It is used by most of the third-party Python libraries, so you can integrate your log messages with the ones from those libraries to produce a uniform log for your application. In order to use it, we simply need to import it as import logging. With the logging module imported, you can use something called a logger to log messages that you want to see. We already talked about different log levels. Let's write a statement for each of them. So after importing it, I will write simple statements as logging.debug and add a message string. In a similar way, we can write statements for other log levels like logging.info, logging.warning, logging.error, and logging.critical. I will comment the app.run for a moment just to get a more clear output of the program. Now, if we run this file, you can see the output shows the severity levels before each message along with the root, which is the name the logging module gives to its default logger. This format, which shows the level, name, and message separated by a colon, is the default output format that can be configured to include things like timestamp, line number, and other details. Also notice that the debug and info messages didn't get logged. This is because, by default, the logging module logs the messages with the severity level of warning or above. You can change that by configuring the logging module to log events of all levels if you want. You can also define your own severity levels by changing configurations. But it is generally not recommended, as it can cause confusion with logs of some third-party libraries that you might be using. But a good way to utilize logging in your application is by configuring the logger by using basic config method. Some of the commonly used parameters for basic config are the following. The first one is level. The root logger will be set to the specified severity level. Second one is file name. This specifies the file to store logs. Third one is file mode. If file name is given, the file is opened in this mode. The default is A, which means append. Another one is the format. This is the format of the log message. Let's implement it in our Bookly application. So after importing it, first I will define a formatter to format the log message as formatting is equal to, we will print the logger name first, then the log level, and finally the log message. After that, I will say logging.basicconfig, and we will pass some parameters like level and format. Now, if we write a log statement for warning and run the application, you can see that log statement here. As I discussed earlier in real-world scenarios on production, we save the log statements in log files. For that, we need to pass the file name parameter. So I will say file name is equal to app.log and the file mode as W, which means to write. We can also pass the A to append new log messages to existing. Now if we rerun this application, this time you can see we couldn't get the log message here in the console because it saved in the log file. You can see that file here. Open it and here the log messages. Great. Keep in mind that if we set the file mode to W, which means the log file is opened in write mode each time basic config is called, and each run of the program will rewrite the file. The default configuration for file mode is A, which is append. You can customize the root logger even further by using more parameters for basic config, like style, handlers, stream, etc. We will talk about them later. But it should be noted that calling basic config to configure the root logger works only if the root logger has not been configured before. Basically, this function can only be called once in your application. Debug, info, warning, error, and critical also call basic config without parameters automatically if it has not been called before. This means that after the first time one of these functions is called, you can no longer configure the root logger because they would have called the basic config function internally. And the default setting in basic config is to set the logger to write to the console in this format. Great. That's about the basic config function, but if we talk specifically about the log formatting, while you can pass any variable that can be represented as a string from your program as a message to your logs, there are some basic elements that are a part of the log record and can be easily added to the output format. For example, if you want to log the process ID along with the logger name and message, you can do something like this one, which can produce the output like this one. Format can take a string with log record attributes in any arrangement you like. You can find the entire list of available attributes on the documentation page by following the link appearing on the screen. Another important feature of this module is the logging variable data. In most cases, you would want to add dynamic information from your application in the logs. You have seen that the logging methods take a string as an argument, and it might seem common to format a string with variables data in a separate line and pass it to the log method. But this can be done directly by using an fstring statement. Here you can see an example code for that, where I am printing the log message if login failed. The arguments passed to the method would be included as variable data in the message. As a bonus, let's discuss another great feature of this module, which is stack trace capturing. You can capture the full stack traces in an application, and exception information can be captured if the exe_info parameter is passed as true. Here you can see a complete example. We are using the try except block to catch the exception, and under the except block, I will call the logging function, and you can see its output here. If exe_info is not set to true, the output of this program would not tell us anything about the exception, which in a real-world scenario might not be as simple as a zero division error. Imagine trying to debug an error in a complicated code base with a simple log message like this one. That's going to be a problem. But the tip is, if you're logging from an exception handler, use the logging.exception method, which logs a message with label error and adds exception information to the message. You don't need to pass exe_info. But if you don't want to get the logs of only label error or above, you can call any of the other logging methods from debug to critical and pass the exe_info parameter as true. I think that's enough for this clip. In our next clip, we will understand how we can define our own customized log handlers, add them for logging, and how to remove them.